So there are many opportunities, and I'm going into the last couple of slides, for innovation that I'm going to go through quickly. Innovation thrives in times when you can create new industries or disrupt existing industries. So if you have industries like the energy industry or the food industry or education that are ripe for change because they've been doing things the same way for a long time and we need them to change, then those are great opportunities for innovation. And the drivers that are going to create this come in many different areas. One is clearly our need for energy independence and clean energy and a sustainable environment. The second is healthcare, not just continuing to cure illness, but a focus on wellness, because we have to address things like the obesity epidemics in this country. But we also have to look at new ways to take care of the elderly or the disabled. And as we are innovative, we need to focus on affordability, because people tend to say innovation drives up costs with new things. We need to change that equation and have innovation focused on driving down costs down. Infrastructure upgrades, whether it is networking, digital infrastructure, or physical infrastructure, both in the US and globally. Changing demographics, whether it is baby boomers versus millennials, a great example is the people in this room, or whether it is ethnic diversity or geographic diversity. And last, technology. And the focus in technology is really going to be about affordability, security, mobility, and as was mentioned earlier, much more of a focus on the intersection of disciplines as we bring biology and information technology and nanotechnology and social sciences and design together to solve many of the problems. Now, one of the interesting things about innovation and one of the challenges about innovation is with every new big thing comes what I call unintended consequences, which is we had cars. And many of you can't imagine a world without cars. Actually, I can't. But there was a time there weren't cars. And then all of a sudden we had lots of cars. And then what happens? You have accidents. Now, especially when you take two innovations together, which is cars and cell phones, you have even more accidents. So cars cause accidents, but we're not going to not drive. We learned how to refine oil and do different things with oil. And it is one of the contributors to ending up in a situation where we have a problem with climate change, and we need to address that. We found we had a need for cheap calories, for cheaper food. We had a lot of corn, and someone came up with this wonderful thing called high fructose corn syrup that for many years we thought was great until we realized its contribution to obesity. And so suddenly that's an unintended consequences, and it's in everything because it's very cheap. And we subsidize corn. So again, innovations often come with those consequences. Email. I couldn't live without it. The younger people here probably text and don't email, but with email then came spam and other misuses of those technology. Well, we have a whole new set, and when you're innovating, you like to think you think about these consequences, but you can't, because when you come out with something new, you have no idea all of the different ways that people are going to use it, and people then naturally often abuse it in addition to using it. And there are some very powerful advances in technology that I was involved in helping to start with the internet and the web and social networking that are wonderful but have unintended and unknown consequences still on our society and on how we are growing. And let me just point out a couple of them. There's a common phrase, the world is flat. The world is fat too, but the world is flat, coming from Tom Friedman's book. And the world is flat, meaning we're all connected, but it's increasingly uneven. Meaning increasing income gaps, the differences between, people talk about the digital divide, those who have the resources and that don't. And the thing that I'd like those of you who are younger in the audience to think about is it's increasingly impatient and shallow, because we are increasingly thinking that everything can come immediately. So instead of learning to critically think about things, we Google for the answer. Google is wonderful. Being able to Google for information and how much you can learn is one of the most incredible things to help our knowledge. But it should not be a replacement for the times when you actually should think a little bit and take a step back and think through the problem. Social networking is wonderful, but the number of friends you have does not replace the depth of connection of actual friendship. And the online world should not replace the offline world. It should augment them. I'll go a step further, which is often the brain, when you overuse a certain aspect of it, evolution then atrophies other aspects of it. Well, the online world plays to two senses, sight and sound. If we underuse touch, smell, and taste, which happen to be the senses that are most connected to our emotions, what's going to happen? So I'm not anti-technology. Again, I have spent my life building and introducing these technologies. The answer is not to reject or deny that this is happening. The answer is balance and awareness and just thinking about some of these unintended consequences, because engineering, and this is again one of the wonderful things about engineering, is about touching, building, playing, experimenting. Some of it can be done online, but some of it should be down the street with people, putting your hands on things. And the most wonderful thing about innovation is that these consequences can then just be turned into opportunities for innovation, because those then are problems that we need to then address. Just a word about 21st century talent, i.e. those in your room who are the talent of the future. Probably the most important, let me start off by saying I showed 5 core values. Kids inherently are born with those values, except maybe patience. And our education system, unfortunately, often drills it out of them. So we really need to be thinking about how do we encourage those core values, again, at home and at school. And the right thing to be doing in your education is creating the right soil for that capacity for change. So whether it is learning how to learn, having the ability to learn, the capacity for change, I talked about framing questions, playfulness, exploration, experimentation, unfortunately with budget cuts gets taken out of the school. If that's true, then it needs to be augmented out of school, because these are really important things towards no matter what you're going to do in life, as is collaboration and thinking about things in an interdisciplinary fashion. And then I'll just put in one more plug for engineering. America desperately needs engineers, scientists, and innovators. We have really fallen behind, so it is a great career and something that in huge demand for those of you who are thinking which way you will go. And then let me just finish and talk a minute about success. Because if I ask people in this room, what does success mean? What does it mean to be successful? Too often, it's one metric, and that is money. And I just want to say that there are lots of different types of success as you're growing up and over time and through your life and your career. What you view as success may change at different times, whether you're focused on family or focused on your second career. And so I just want to point out that money may be your measure of success, but is it enough to be comfortable or never enough? There's impact. Do you want to have impact on the world? Do you want to have impact on your community, on other individuals? Like a teacher, for instance, has impact on the students that the teacher touches. Whereas somebody who goes into public service, the President of the United States, has impact on the world. Power. Is power a motivating factor for you over others, or power to affect change? Happiness. What is it that makes you happy? Is it being challenged? Is it pleasure? Is it personal, career, or family life balance? Service to others, service to oneself? You can see there's a lot of different ways to think about success. Recognition. Scientists get a lot of positive incentive from recognition from their peers, as opposed to celebrities who get recognition from the masses. So there are different types of parameters. Realizing your potential, be careful of getting in the mode of it never being enough, because then you just keep going and going and going, or always moving up. And then I, again, have just listed some of the measures. The key thing, though, and parents in the room, cover your ears, my message to you is decide what success means for you. Because don't automatically subscribe to what is expected of you. Now, again, if you're young enough, you have to take your parents' input in. And actually, I won't say if you're young enough. I still expect my son to listen to me. I just know he's not going to necessarily do what I say. But I think it's really important to start to think about what you want from success, and I would say the adults in the room too, because many of us become adults and are still just doing what we think we should be doing or what we think is expected of us, as opposed to what we want to be doing. And again, if you have an interest, engineering is an incredible foundation for all sorts of different paths and for many of those different success metrics. Balance your focus on making things happen, i.e. following a plan, and being open to let things happen. If I had just mapped out a plan and did what I thought I was going to do when I came here to go to Stanford, I would be a project manager somewhere leading an engineering team. It was an openness to take advantage of opportunities as they came about that ended up making for a much more fulfilling life. And last, not everybody is a leader of people, can or wants to be a leader of people, but each one of you, whether you are 10 or 60, is a leader inside and a leader in your own mind in terms of thinking innovatively and thinking about what you can do. Again, it takes lots of grains of sand to make a beach. Each one of those grains of sand is critical to solving the overall problem. So think of each one of yourselves as a grain of sand that is as important as the one next to it, but as individual. And what can you do to actually change the world in your own little way? So I will stop there. I didn't leave quite enough time, as much time for questions as I thought, but we started a little late. So let me open it up to questions.
Okay, you talked about the importance of failure. Is there any failure in your life that maybe at the time you thought was crippling or debilitating, but you've come back from? And what did you learn from that?
I've had lots of failures, but I would say that in the early part of my life, or in the initial phase of my life, I always worked on trying to catch failures when they were small so that I could adapt to it. And so I have lots of stories about where we would launch a product and it wouldn't be quite right and we'd figure out how to change it. I think my own personal failures came later in life and made me realize that I talk about failure, but I hadn't had as much of it early in life, and then later in life had realized, okay, I need to practice what I preach in some sense. And one of the first companies I had to shut down came when I was 50. It was my 6th company, and it, for a variety of reasons, I wasn't the CEO, but I was chairman of the company, and it was devastating to me. It was devastating to have to actually shut down a company and let the people go. But I learned a lesson from it. It didn't stop me from moving on. I got a divorce at age 50. I could look at that and say, okay, what in that relationship? Pick yourself up and learn from it. So I have lots of life things that are called failures and company things that were failures. And it's hard. But I think that if you learn to recognize things early, then often you don't crash and burn. You adapt along the way. Did that answer your question?